Now, that's already consuming huge amounts of money. Now, don't let it fool you. When you hear about this government deficit and government spending and trillions and whatever comes after trillion, gazillion, however much it is, dollars worth of debt, don't ever believe that, because how can a country, even an individual person, how can that country or person ever be in debt when they print their own money? Do not be fooled by this deficit BS. The United States prints its own money. So the United States is in no form of debt. So therefore, if you have a military patrolling and controlling the borders of Mexico and America, or the United States, I should say, then that means you have to pay these military workers, these soldiers. You have to provide them food. You have to provide them health care. And it will get rather expensive, because in order to patrol the border completely, you have to stand a man or woman, a person, a soldier on every inch, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, all the way across from tip to tip of the border. And that's just not going to happen. So regardless, it's still going to be coming in. They're still going to be going back out. Well, you ask, why is this a big problem? And why is it such an issue? And what does that have to do with swine flu? Well, the government, again, likes to keep things nice and neat. And they leave it up to the Census Bureau to keep things nice and neat. Now, if you have any type of discrepancy in gray area, then it's no longer nice and neat. It's shaded. It's no concrete lines. Now, I'll speak for where I live, and I'm in no way, saying this as a racist remark or anything, but I can get up to go to work in the morning, and every morning I'll see a group of literally 10 Mexicans riding bikes or in their vehicle on their way to work for a local landscape company in my area. So I don't know these people personally. I don't know if they're legally Americans born here or if they're illegal Americans. And I personally do not care. But the government does, because illegal Mexican immigrants work against government budgets, spending, because when they work, normally they work for under the table money, because of course you have to provide social security numbers and all these types of proof of IDs that you're a United Snakes of American citizen. And if you're not a citizen, then of course you can't be filed on taxes and other things like that have to do with government budget spending. So they don't like that. Anyway, this is just talking about my area. And I'm sure throughout the United States, there are companies, private companies, that hire illegal Mexican immigrants to do work, because, of course, they will work for cheap. And like I said, this is not a shot. I'm not racist. I'm not talking down or anything. This is just the actual truth. And like I said, you might not like some of the things I say, but, I say it. This is the purpose of this, to get you to think freely. So like I said, unless you stand a person shoulder to shoulder from tip to tip of the border, you can't physically control the border. So what's the next step? We have to mentally control the border. Well, how you do that? Again, we bring up swine flu H1N1. Americans said that the swine flu originated in Mexico. Mexican media said that, it originated in the United States. So by them bringing out this new pandemic, because the AIDS pandemic kind of wore off, this new pandemic again, catastrophic worldwide death from a disease, bring up this new pandemic disease, swine flu, H1N1, created and brought over by Mexicans. So if the Census Bureau can't count illegal Mexicans, and let's say you have a private owner that does landscape or asphalt or whatever work it may be, are hiring illegal Mexicans, then they got to find a way to isolate them. So they don't necessarily have to count them, because they can't count them. They don't have the government papers and the government IDs to count them. So you have to isolate them. And how do you isolate them without physically pulling them apart? You mentally isolate them by feeding thoughts into the ones that are closer to them. So if, like I said, if you have 10 Mexicans, illegal aliens, working for one company, if a company gets a scare about swine flu that came from Mexico, then more than likely he'll be a little hesitant or way cautious about hiring Mexicans from then on, and even firing the ones that already work for him. So if he fires or just doesn't hire these Mexicans, then what does that do? That leaves them homeless, maybe, and jobless for the most part. In America, the United Snakes of America, you need that mighty dollar. If you don't have that mighty dollar, you don't make it. And yes, the $1 is the mightiest dollar of all the dollars. Now, if a Mexican is not working, or a Mexican family is not working, earning income, that means they're not eating. And if they're not eating, that means they're not thriving. And if they're not thriving, that means they probably can't survive here. So then they end up going back to Mexico. That's mental form of population control. It separates the borders mentally to the point where they physically separate the people. Anyway, so after the swine flu scare broke out, you find these states, the lower Mexican American states, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Lower California, all of these states started coming up with swine flu breakouts and outbreaks in schools and job sites, even football teams and stuff. Everything's getting shut down. We have to quarantine and hurry up and remedy this epidemic or pandemic, excuse me. So then those states, Mexican American states, are being viewed by the rest of America with the crooked eye. So then what do you do from there? You immediately come up with a vaccination. Anytime you have a deadly pandemic or epidemic, you immediately follow it with a vaccination. Now, some of y'all may not understand what a vaccination is. Some of y'all may. I know most probably may. All a vaccination is, for the most part, is some type of substance, as a filler substance, often, egg product, substances, things like that. But the key ingredient to a vaccination is a weakened version of the actual virus itself. And you take notice that didn't happen with AIDS, because the AIDS idea was already too strong and they didn't want to do anything about that. But anytime you have an outbreak of a pandemic disease, you come up with a vaccination. And I say that because, and also recall when I say you take notice, there have been no American-made pandemics. Because in the early 1900s, you had, I believe, the Spanish flu. And then you had in the mid 1900s, you had the Asian flu. Then you had the Hong Kong flu. Okay, none of these are American. You've never heard of the Wyoming flu. You've never heard of the Vermont flu or the California flu. If you have, it was probably localized and I have never heard of it. But there have been the Spanish flu, the Asian flu, the Hong Kong flu. Now, I don't know the difference between the Asian flu and the Hong Kong flu, but maybe the two flus were born in two different areas, because I could have sworn Hong Kong was in Asia. But anyway, then you had the avian flu, bird flu. Wow, interesting. And now you have the swine